It was a normal day in Camelot. Shining Armor was out for a walk in town since he had a day off from his royal duty as a captain of the Royal Guard. As he was just walking around to enjoying his day off, he walked into some pony and he immediately apologized. And he immediately recognized it was his good friend Silverlay. Silverlay and Shining Armor were good friends, and he hadn't even seen her much lately. Most because that he has been quite occupied when he's as the captain of the Royal Guard and training new recruits. So he hadn't had much time to spend with his friends. But she immediately said no harm done, that she was okay, and he then started just small talk with her, asking what she had been up to lately. She said that she has been pretty much occupied herself with her work, and now she has having a day off herself and just enjoying the day. And then he asked her if she was hungry. And in fact, she said yes. And he suggested they could go to a cafe there nearby to get something to eat and to catch up, to just have a conversation, to just talk about what they have been up to lately. And Sybil Lane thought maybe that was a good idea, since they hadn't even seen or talked with each other for quite some time, so she would agreed. So they went to this cafe, sat down, and ordered some cupcakes or sandwich for anyone wanted to eat. There, they would just small talk about what just happened. They actually just talk about what he had been up to. Shining Armor said that he has been training new recruits to the Royal Guard and has been quite a lot of training from them, he said. And Silverlay smiled and said, that I can only bet, Shining Armor. So, how's your sister, though? She asked. Since Silverlay had heard that his youngest sister, Twilight, had become a new princess, and that she was really curious to know more about it. Shining Armor said that he was actually proud of his younger sister and both happy for her. And Silverlay hasn't even seen Twilight since she moved to Ponyville, but she was also a good friend to Twilight. But while they were talking, Shining Armor asked Silverlay how it was going between her and her boyfriend. Silverlay has been dating a stallion for about 5 years at this point, and she said that they are no longer together. He was quite surprised because he had expecting that they would end up getting married and start a family together at some point. Then he asked what happened. Well, she said that he was offered as a position within the business that he was working for in Maid. Oh, well, that's a good compliment. A promotion is not that bad. Well, it first be word, not that I was only happy for him, she said. But they tried to have a long distance, and there was even plans for her, perhaps, possibly to move to Maidhaven with him even at some point later on. But as the long distance wasn't going out as much, they won't be able to see each other so often, maybe once or twice in a month or so. And eventually, they start seeing it less and less, and their feelings for each other just dwindle over time, and eventually there were no feelings anymore, so they decided to just end a mutual breakup. But they remained as good friends though. Shining Armor said that he was sorry to hear that, because he said that he could see her and get marrying him, the stallion, and start a family at some point. Even she admitted that she thought about the same thing, but since they both agreed on to just be friends, and since the long distance didn't work it much, and she asked the same thing about him, if he has been dating any pony lately, but he said no. But he did date the Princess Cadence for a short time, but it didn't work out as much. And Cadence, even though Cadence later on, when he heard that she became the next ruler of the Crystal Empire, which was quite an impressive next step in her life, Silverlay heard about it too, and she was quite impressed that she happened. But at least since both agreed that Cadence actually were a naturally born leader, and both agreed to that. So they start talking about something else, and eventually Silverlay had to go because she had some other things to take care of before going home, but they both agreed maybe to see each other sometime later on, if they ran into each other. And Shining Armor agreed. But even though that Shining Armor, at some time after his first meeting with Silverlay, there was something that she hadn't, something that she wasn't aware of. For the past 6 or 5 years or so, Shining Armor had a secret crush on her. But he was completely aware that she already was in a relationship, and he didn't want to jeopardize it by informing her that he was in love with her. Since she was in a long-term relationship at the time, he didn't want to jeopardize her relationship with her boyfriend then. And if it did, he had no idea how they would affect their friendship either. Because at the same time, he didn't want to jeopardize her relationship with her boyfriend at the time, and also he didn't want to jeopardize their long-time friendship. So he kept quiet. He had even told anybody, not even his younger sister Twilight. But now, since Silverlay was single again, even though that she has only been single for a couple of weeks, he didn't want to rush in too fast for her, because he decided to let her be single for some time to get used to be single, and then maybe ask her out. But he realized one thing: being the captain of the Royal Guard will be quite a busy life for him. He didn't know exactly when he had the next day off, or if he can take a week a break from being the captain or anything. And he already knew that being the captain of the Royal Guard is a quite busy occupation. But he very much enjoyed it. So even though when he one day ran into Silverlay on the street, but a month later, he was just out for a walk just before going home when he ran into her. She was actually at the market to buy some food herself, and they actually had a good conversation, that just small talk before what's going on. But before she was about to leave, he thought maybe to ask her a question. He did ask her if she had, or if she would consider to maybe go out with him on a date. She was first looking at him, and she wasn't really sure, but she said yes. And she asked what kind of date he had in mind. And he said, what about going for dinner? At least a good start, and at least she agreed. So both agreed to go on their first date on Friday. And he actually showed up at the restaurant maybe 10 minutes earlier, and then she showed up, walking in a light blue dress, and it's a beautiful sight. When he saw her, his heart was beating faster and almost every second. And he actually felt quite happy when he did ask her. And during their date, though, he actually talked about her, told her then about his crush on her for some time, and the reason why he didn't tell her, because he didn't want to jeopardize her friendship with her, and even to risk her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, because he was not that type of pony. And she appreciated that he didn't tell, or it is that he thought more about her well-being first. But she did admit, sometime after her breakup, she actually thought about him, if there was something possible that they could end up being dating or something. But eventually, she agreed to being on this date, and And he did even said, let's see if this can lead something to something more maybe serious. And she agreed. But even though this was their first date, and Shining Armor Bully even thought realized that there's always a risk that even if he did ask her on a second date, she might decline it. And that is something that he always been aware of. But after their dinner, he actually accompanied her back home so that he can be safe, and then he asked her if she was interested for a second date, and she agreed. So they actually decided to have go to the movies by the next Friday. But by the next week, he sadly had to inform her that he wouldn't be able to go on her date because he had to take some of the new recruits on a training exercise during the weekend. So he wouldn't be able to go to the date. But she agreed, she understood. And they agreed to make another exception for next time later on. Because he informed her that he had the next weekend after that day off. So that at least they could go on to have their movie date. So by the weekend after, they did meet up in the movies and had a good time. But at this point, that it didn't take long for the public to at least his guard co-workers, colleagues, and his friends, family to find out that he has been dating Silverlay. His parents were the one among the first to find out, and they were just happy for his son, proud that he could have found some pony to be with. And even his sister Twilight was just happy. And Silverlay's family, they were happy too. They had been seeing their daughter being in a long-term relationship, and they were also both aware what led to the end of that. But after about almost couple of months of being dating, Shining Armor was out away at town again with some training exercise with some of the new recruits again. And during the time when Silverlay was at home, she heard a knock on the door, and when she opened it, there was her ex-boyfriend. She was like quite surprised to see him there. And he asked her if he can come in, and since both actually ended their relationship in a good terms, so she had no problem with it. So when he walked in, they sat down and they small talked, and she asked him what has been up to lately or how his life been so far in Manhattan, and he said that it has been going well. But then he asked her if she would consider that they could maybe start again their relationship. And it turns out that he wasn't even aware that she was already been dating Shining Armor. But then she sadly informed him that she no longer is single. He was a bit surprised and asked who she had been dating so far, and how long this had been. And she informs him that she has been dating this stallion for quite some time now, and is actually Shining Armor. And he was big surprised. Shining Armor, the Royal Guard captain? And she agreed, and she confirmed it was Shining Armor. But she said she wasn't even really sure if she would go back with him in a relationship, since they tried a long distance before, and she wasn't even really sure if she would move to Manhattan to be with him. After all, she even has a lot of her friends and family back home, but since Manhattan wasn't that far from Canterlot, she could always go back and forward when she could. But they both agreed that it wasn't maybe good idea to go back together again. So even though they both decided to just be friends still though. But before he left, he told her that he was happy that she had found some pony to be happy with. And especially with Shining Armor, who is known to be brave, strong, and courage. and especially being the captain of the Royal Guard. That is not more impressive occupation than anything else. She was actually happy to hear that from him. And when Shining Armor came back after the exercise training, she informed him that her ex-boyfriend came by, and he was a little bit taken aback, but he knows that they were still in good terms of friendship, and he asked what he wanted. She explained, but agreed that it wasn't no idea to go back with her since long distance wasn't gonna work. And even though that she still thought maybe that her ex-boyfriend still were in love with her, but realized there was no way for her to go back with him. Now she's with Shining Armor. And Shining Armor believed maybe it was a good idea, but he wasn't even against that Silverlay was still good friends with her ex-boyfriend. And he was just happy to have someone like her in his life. And after about 2 years of being dating, Shining Armor and Silverlay actually moved in together, and they actually had a good time. And they thought, since they had been dating for 2 years and they had known each other for several years before, they were actually had no problem to just move in. It because he told her that now that they've been dating, there's no rush into something, the next step like moving in, getting married, have a family. He wanted to take it slowly because he didn't want to rush into things which could end up in a bad relationship, and she agreed. But just after being living together for about 2 years, for about that time though, just barely 6 months after that he moved in, Shining Armor proposed to Silverlay. She didn't take that as much shockingly surprised, but she was happy. She said yes, and when they both had informed families and friends, they were all overjoyed, especially for Twilight. She couldn't be more happy to see her big brother to get married with his true love. And Silverlay actually had asked Twilight to be her bridesmaid at the wedding, which she accepted. Shining Armor, he had actually had asked Spike to be his best man at the wedding, and he agreed. They decided to have their wedding at Candlelight, invite some friends and a closer family, and it was just a perfect time. Both Silverlay and Shining Armor had agreed to allow Pinkie Pie to organize the wedding ceremony afterward, the party afterwards, and they didn't regret it. At the party themselves had just a great time. They were just perfectly fine for them both. Seeing both families, seeing how their daughter and the son was so happy together, and especially when they first shared their first dance together, they couldn't have been more happier. And later, they actually went to Saddle Arabia for another week, which Celestia and Twilight stood for the arrangement, and they could have been more happier there. By exploring the culture and trying some new things and just having a great time. Saddle Arabia was probably one of the best places for the honeymoon, said Silverlay when they were on the honeymoon. She had always heard stories about the place, but never been able to go there, since it was so far and she didn't have the time. But now she was happy to be able to go there. And just barely 2 years after they got married though, both Shining Armor and Silverlay found out they were expecting a daughter later on, when they found out was going to have a girl. When they told their families and friends, both families were so overjoyed, and his mother, Twilight Velvet, she was crying. She was excited to be a grandmother. And Twilight, when she was told, she almost fainted of joy to be an aunt, and She even had told her brother her and Silverlay that she wouldn't mind to be there for the daughter to practice her magic, and when she was if she was born as a unicorn. Both agreed to do so, and a few months later, the daughter was born, and they named her Silver. Silver was really talented in magic, like her dad, her aunt, and her grandparents. But even at the first, she was like quite shy around new ponies, and especially when she saw her adopt her brother Spike as a dragon, she was scared of them for the first year. But after getting to know that, knowing him better after some time, that he wasn't that bad at all. He wasn't that scary. In fact, he was more hilarious. He loved reading comic books for her, daring books for her, and they bonded quite well with that. And in fact, when Silver was about 10, she became Twilight's personal student, and she didn't hesitate to say accepted. Her parents was quite happy to see that she was chosen as Twilight's personal student. By keeping that tradition alive, since Twilight herself used to be the personal student of Princess Celestia. And since that Silver was quite talented in magic, but was something else she liked to do most. Sometimes she even practiced self-defense with her dad when he had the time off, and sometimes even went to see him when he was at work. She wanted to be a royal guard herself, maybe the next captain of all. So when she was older, she told her parents that she wanted to be a royal guard herself, and maybe to be the next future captain if her father would retire. Her parents, they were not against her dream, because both actually encouraged her to complete and to embrace her dream to be a royal guard, even if it meant that she wouldn't be the next captain. But when she was old enough, she applied to the Royal Guard Academy in Canterlot, and with her father as one of her personal trainers, she actually was accepted in the academy, but she knew this will be a very tough training. It will be a lot of exercise, training, hard training in different environments during their almost different scenarios of any danger, but she was up for it. She was not a quitter. And after about 3 years of training, she had become a full member of the Royal Guards. Even after some time, after several years later, she learns that her father was planning to retire, and he was looking for his successor as the next captain of the Royal Guard. At first, there were many potentials, including herself, but she told him that not to pick her because she is her daughter and that because they're by blood, because she told him, pick but who is the bestest guard that he has trained, and only of his choice, not because they are related and expected to be chosen because of that. She was actually fine if she would never even be the next captain, and in fact, she wasn't even chosen as the next captain, but she was chosen as a second in command, which she also agreed would be also a good thing. After all, if the captain would be away or injured, she would step in as the second in command if something would happen. And when she was informed that she was chosen as second in command to her mom, she was proud. Even her dad was proud, even though he was already aware of it, but she was happy. But after a couple of years, she actually got married with one of the fellow royal guards, Stallion, in fact. And they got married after being dating for about 4 years. And they later had 2 daughters and 1 son together. For a royal guards member in a family like Shining Armor, he was happy for his daughter to be there. But for Shining Armor to be with Silverlay is probably the best choice he has ever done. Because he realized that when he first saw her after all those years ago, when he first encountered her again after some time, he had even at that moment realized he had run into his true love and his future wife. If he was aware of that, he would have still been happy. But he was actually happy that he took the courage to ask her out on a date. And he was quite happy that this relationship continued, and it worked. And even Silverlay, after all these years, she could have been more happier to be with some pony like Shining Armor. Some pony who would protect her, and even who made her laugh all the time, even especially if she was sick or upset or something, but she was happy to be with him. And this is how Shining Armor and Silverlay from their true love got a family together. The end.